Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Welcome to our expert session, Your Data, Your Questions, Self-Surface Customer Insights Without the Bottleneck, brought to you by our friends at Actian. I'm Jenna Holland, Director of Digital and Marketing here at Data Science Connect, the world's largest data and AI ecosystem for enterprise leaders. Today, we're excited to welcome attendees from all around the world to explore how organizations can empower teams with self-service customer insights, enabling faster answers, better decisions, and greater business impact without the traditional data bottlenecks. In an era where fragmented data and limited visibility slow down innovation, organizations must move beyond reactive processes to stay competitive. Turning data chaos into a strategic advantage requires a modern approach to data intelligence that puts power directly into the hands of those making decisions. In this webinar, we will explore how the Actian Data Intelligence Platform bridges the gap between complex data and actionable business value. We will highlight how Actian AI Analyst lets non-technical users ask natural language questions directly against your KYC datasets. By empowering business users to explore datasets with guardrails, organizations can eliminate technical dependencies while maintaining control, trust, and compliance. We're honored to hear from our distinguished expert, Phil Wall from Actian. David Nifter from the Actian team will also be working alongside Phil to answer any questions you may have during the presentation. So be sure to drop those in the Q&A section on the right-hand side of your screen. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. To make this feel a little more in person, we suggest you add a photo to your profile and include your bio, LinkedIn profile, and other information you want your fellow attendees to see. Next, please take advantage of the Q&A and chat features in the right sidebar. We'll be addressing your questions throughout the webinar, so be sure to upvote the questions you'd like the panel to address. And finally, to learn more about how to empower your teams with self-service customer insights and eliminate data access bottlenecks, check out the call to action below throughout the webinar. Now, without further ado, let's kick off this discussion.
Okay. I am here. Excellent.
Hi, Phil.
Can everyone hear me okay? Jenna?
Yep, you sound great.
Excellent. Can you see me too?
I can.
All right, excellent. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Phil Wall. I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer here with Actian. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to you about Actian's AI Analyst, where we can help you get access to your data and address the questions that you have in a self-service approach where we can actually interact with our data, have conversations with data, and more importantly, get answers back that result in trusted analysis, things that we can actually act on. So Jen already covered some of the housekeeping, but just to put it out there again, you will be on mute. There is a Q&A function in this. Please, I have a partner with me, David Nifter. Please launch any questions you have into the Q&A section. He'll try and address them via messaging back and forth, but if not, we definitely have time today to address your questions live. Jenna had informed me that this will be recorded and distributed after. And we actually have about 45 minutes for our discussion today. And then finally, any of the resources from today's session will be available and posted afterwards. One venue being the YouTube channel by DSC, right? If you do have any questions or technical issues with this webinar, there is webinars at datasciconnect.com. You can also try and post it in the chat. We'll see what we can do. We have some support here for you. All right, so covering that. All right, so introducing Actian's AI Data Analyst for trusted decisions. If we think about our data environments today, one of the harder things to do is not only just find data, but understand if that data should be trusted or get different perspectives on maybe reports that were built. There's always a lot of work that goes into building out these reports, these analysis dumps that we use on our day-to-day. If we think about that in a highly regulated organization such as banking or finance, right? One of our major issues is ensuring that our customers have been through the appropriate rules and regulations and evaluations. So today's subject and what I'll be demoing today is how we can accelerate our AML and KYC investigations. So how would a compliance team member use Actian's AI Analyst to get answers that they can trust? So if you think about your organizations, whether you're in finance or not, you probably have a lot of the same questions that you have of your data. Okay, I see sales reports. Okay, what region's performing better than the other, right? What product is performing better than others? If the reports aren't built to address those specific questions you have, then what? What do you do from there, right? A lot of times people go ahead and create report requests, go download some data and DIY it. So what I want to show you today in our demonstration is how Actian's AI Analyst can help accelerate that type of investigation and get you answers that you can trust, which is backed up by business understanding, business metrics that have been defined, as well as the governance details and our glossary information that exists within our environments. So in today's demonstration, let's imagine for a minute that I'm the head of financial crime compliance at working with a retail bank. I'm looking at my calendar here and I see that tomorrow I have a compliance committee review. And with that, I also see there's been an email from one of my team members stating that there are some anomalies in our customers. There's been a number of customers that have been ranked as low risk, but they're generating a lot of activity that's close to or above our suspicious activity thresholds. So if I don't have a specific report built for this or a specific query already set up for this, how would I go about doing the research? This type of research can take hours, days, possibly weeks. With Actian's AI Analyst, what I'll be able to show you today is how we can get in there and figure out specifically what's going on with these customers. And we'll be able to do some deeper research and analysis along the way. So let me go ahead and move over to the demo. All right. So as I go ahead and jump into Actian's AI Analyst, right, if I'm thinking about these customers, well, who are these customers? What were they classified as? And what is the transactions that they're working with? What's the transaction amounts? What is triggering my analyst team to say we might have a problem here? With Actian's AI Analyst, we can start our investigation. We need to better understand which of these customers have been classified as low and might be exceeding our suspicious activity reporting thresholds. So since this is connected into our systems, I can easily interact with my data right here through the prompt and start to ask it simple questions. Do we have customers classified as low risk who exceed the SAR threshold within the last 30 days? So as I ask that question, what Actian's AI Analyst is doing is it's going to start to develop a plan, and it's going to start to research information from my systems. It's going to do a number of different things. It's going to aggregate information for me. It's going to break it down by our risk factors. Wait a minute, risk factors? We actually have a whole definition list of what our risk factors are, anywhere from 1 to a higher number. The higher the number, the higher the risk. So it's actually tapping into my business context to figure out, well, if I find these customers, are they of a high risk or a low risk? It'll also grab me the information from our customer detail lists, and it will actually create some analysis for me in the form of a column chart, a bar chart, and it will even build me an entire compliance report. So what it's done is, with a simple question, I'm able to start to get information back. It will discover our data, it will aggregate it, it will gather up all the necessary information and do the analysis for me and build a report. This is what we all need AI to do for us, right? Is do this heavy amount of work, researching, finding, poking, prodding all of our data systems to get back the information that we need to answer the questions that are important to us. Now, this takes maybe 1 to 2 minutes, it says right up here. I've already pre-generated this, So we'll be able to just start looking at the results. So if I look at the results here, do we have any customers classified as low risk who have exceeded the SAR amount within the last 30 days? And very short and sweet, it says yes. The scale of the findings are pretty significant. So in working with AI, it's understanding what I'm looking for, but it's also using AI's LLM capabilities to converse back with me. This is what we're calling conversational analytics, right? As we're looking at our data, we can see that Actian AI Analyst has found us 93,000 low-risk customers with a risk factor between 1 and 11 who have breached the 10K SAR threshold over the current 30-day rolling window. So right there, it's telling me that I do have a number of low-risk customers that have broke our SAR threshold. Now, moreover, it actually does some analysis beyond that. It actually tells me a few different findings, or it's extracted a few different findings from the data. It's starting to see that there's been some structuring patterns in my data. There seems to be some algorithmic uniformity in my data as well, and zero enhanced due diligence coverage. The entire flagged population sits outside the bank's enhanced monitoring regime. So in working with AI, I've been able to ask a number of questions and get some quick results, but I've not seen anything like this where it actually goes in and understands my business and does the analysis and brings back those insights that are relevant to me, the head of compliance. So as I look through this, not only did it find a couple of interesting points, but it also reports back out an entire executive summary. If I open this up, I can see that the analyst actually identified customers of low risk, a risk factor below 12, within our gold layer customer registry whose 30-day rolling SAR amount exceeds the standard 10K threshold. So Actian AI Analyst is going out, gathering information for me, synthesizing it and understanding it because of my business context, and then actually taking it further and then reporting it out. So it gives me a number of details here about these customers. And one of the things that is bolded out is that there's no enhanced due diligence currently in place. That seems to be a very big problem for us as a bank, and we can see the compliance alert right here, right? There's an exposure amount of about 966 mil. That's not good if I'm the head of compliance, and that's not good for our bank. If we are flagged with any of these customers, we may be in some serious trouble. But Actian AI Analyst has done this analysis for me. It's also looked at the data multiple ways. It's looking at the risk factors for low, which is 1 to 12 or less than 12, and it's flagging the number of customers that fall outside of that risk pattern, and also telling me how much of an exposure there is. It even goes deeper. Potential structuring signals. So it's done some statistical analysis against all of my data, all the transactions, and it's finding that there's a number of amounts are clustering very close to the threshold. In finance, when I start to see clusters of transactions, I start to get worried because that does sound very much like structuring. How do people stay right along the threshold so that they don't get flagged? Actian AI Analyst has brought that forward. Looking at uniform distribution across all these bands as well. There's a range here that it's discovered that's nearly identical. So in banking, in normal customers, we don't see uniformity, right? We see variability. Uniformity and clustering, that starts to raise my attention. Now, it also calls out that there's an absence of the enhanced due diligence, right, for the entire population. So why is that? Why did all of these people get classified as low? Why have they not been upgraded to like a medium or high, right? There seems to be something going on with our enhanced due diligence flagging system. It also gives me some additional information about the individual SAR amounts as well. And then at the bottom, it actually recommends some compliance actions. how to go about fixing this, because it knows from my question that I'm interested in what's going on with these low customers, and it's found all of these signals. Now it's actually created some recommended compliance actions, such as reclassifying, right? Do a whole batch reclassify of these customers, maybe trigger off some enhanced due diligence for all of these customers that fall within the population. Maybe do a SAR filing for these customers. So there's a number of things that we can now do, but what Actian AI Analyst has done is it's gone through our systems, understood our context, what our SAR bands are, what our data systems are, what our definitions are, and what our business context is, and now applied that to our conversation that we're having with Actian AI. So with this, now we have all of this information available, right? All of this information is coming from a governed system. We're able to help Actian AI analysts understand the terms, the metrics, the glossaries, all of the information about our business context. And that actually helps prevent the AI from hallucinating off of something it read on Reddit. It helps to prevent it from creating conflicting interpretations of the data, or querying the wrong data, or using inconsistent definitions. We're able to provide the business context and the business understanding to the AI to help you more trust the results that it produces. So this report by itself, this would be enough, but since Actian AI Analyst has already called all this attention to these different customers, to all of these signals, right? What probably would have taken me a couple days to figure out, now I've had produced and presented to me in minutes. With that extra time I've now saved, right? Let's go ahead and start to ask some additional questions about this and really hone in. Out of all the customers that were low risk, but breaking our SAR threshold, who's the top? Who's the top 5 violators of this? I can actually ask that question in Actian AI, and it will take the information that we've been working with, and it will use that as additional context as we drill deeper in. So if I ask it to show me the top 5 customers by ID with the highest mismatch between their KYC, or Know Your Customer classification, and their transaction behaviors, it will go ahead and bring that forward and show me exactly who those people are. In my mind, as a compliance manager, seeing the top 5, those are my primaries that I would want to open a case against or to do a deeper investigation. And if I could see anything reusable from them, then I would apply it to the rest of my population. So if we think about it, what we're doing now is we're no longer just questioning, do we have a problem? Now we're actually starting to prioritize who to do investigations on. With Actian AI Analyst, we're able to get right in there and start working with our data. Notice I've created no report requests. I've created no service tickets for an analyst to come in and help me. Actian AI Analyst is doing all of this work for me and guiding me along the way. So as this starts to run, as you'll start to see in working with Actian's AI Analyst, it does a lot of pre-work. You'll see with this drop down what the actual analyst is doing behind the scenes. So it's breaking down my question. I've asked for the top 5 customers with the highest mismatch between their classifications. It leverages the best parts of AI to understand my question, and then it looks through all of the information that I've provided it to give it additional context. Let me see. So what it's done is it looks through and starts to query data in our systems using a system called SemQL, and we call that semantic SQL, right? It's an abstraction layer over our actual SQL systems, because Snowflake works different than Databricks, works different than SQL Server. So SemQL helps to structure all of that, what we're going to do for the appropriate database. So it starts to do that analysis, And it actually goes through and creates the charts and the bar charts and all of the table information. So it's doing the work behind the scenes and showing you exactly how it gets there. So when we look at the answer and we're saying, show me the top 5 customers with the highest mismatch between their KYC classification and their transaction behavior, what it's doing is now presenting the results, right? So in this case, Actian AI Analyst actually created a formula. There's a mismatch score that it's using. It's the SAR amount times 12 minus the risk factor. So it's developed a metric, not necessarily a metric that I had in my metrics definitions, but it's using that to help to understand who is the most at risk out of this customer population. So it says it right here. The formula compares each customer's KYC classification against their 30-day rolling SAR exposure. The lower the risk factor, or the more deeply the customer was cleared for scrutiny, the more severity any SAR breach is. So in that case, the higher the score, the higher the risk. So it's actually gone through and done a whole scoring methodology for me. Now, I could have come up with this approach. To be honest, it's possible, right? But AI already did it for me through Actian's AI Analyst and is showing me all the details so that I can follow it and get closer to the answers I'm looking for, which is, who are these 5 top customers? What it's also doing is telling us what the data is telling us, that there's low risk customers, right, that have a risk factor below 12, which require no enhanced due diligence, right? There are a number of these customers that have a SAR exposure over the last 30 days of a rolling total, right, that should be being flagged because it's over 10,000. So Actian AI Analyst goes through, looks at our business context, all the details around it, and uses that then to help bring forward what the real issues are in my data systems. And right here, I actually have my risk signals. I have the rank of the top 4. I also have the customer ID, of the top 5. I can see their risk factor. I can see how far above the thresholds we're at as well. So Actian AI Analyst has done all of this analysis and brought it back so I can start investigations on these top folks if I wanted to continue to be ready for our regulatory audit that's coming up at the end of the month. So in this, it actually shows me a lot more analysis of what the floor is for this analysis. It also shows me what the compliance implications are, right? Whether EDD is warranted, where the structuring patterns are present, if I need to do a financial investigation, any of that. That's all being brought forward. It even gives me a little bit of detail about the data sensitivity, right? There is some customer level detail in there, and I do need to be specific with how I share that, even within my own organization. So all of this Actian AI Analyst is doing for me. It's bringing all of this information back. It's done the analysis. And instead of me having to look through potentially hundreds of different reports or hundreds of different systems or manual alerts, I can immediately focus on the 5 customers with the strongest discrepancies. And I can start to hone in very specifically on why they are actually classified as low risk based on their KYC classification and their observed transaction behavior. So we can see all of that, and we can see all the customers that actually, what's been reoccurring in my systems is this enhanced due diligence, right? For some reason, my data systems don't seem to be flagging us for enhanced due diligence. And that's something I wasn't aware of before I started working with Actian AI Analyst. So all of these results that we've had, these are actionable, right? And this is what I've been able to gather with Actian's AI Analyst in minutes, right? If you think about it, this is not AI just gathering data. I've heard many people using AI to do analysis. I have an Excel file, I had it do analysis. I'm looking at this data and I'm having it do analysis. But we're not using AI just to gather data or collect information from our systems. we're actually using AI in Actian AI Analyst to understand and interpret the business meaning, right? And determine the analysis methodologies and revealing discrepancies in our data based on our business rules and processes. Now, how we get that context, I'll actually show us in a little bit as I show you the studio behind the scenes of where we bring that in. But having that additional context is what's required to trust the data. So if we continue on with our deep dive here, if you think about the exposure that we have with these customers, let's see if we can gather a little bit more evidence. Are these people working our banking system in a certain way, right? Are they doing foreign wire transfers? Are they using electronic payment systems like Zelle? Are they doing regular, normal customer things like retail purchases or debit transactions? What we can actually ask here is we can ask our AI analysts what transaction channels are actually driving this exposure. You can fire that off, and Actian AI Analyst will start to break down that question and start to look through what data we have available, and it'll start to organize out what we mean by channels. In our bank, we have about 6 different channels of how people can work with their money. So it will actually look through and find all of that. So as that goes ahead and starts to generate, there is a question in the chat that I just saw. How does Actian AI Analyst differ from a BI chatbot? I think, yeah, David got it. So though this looks like a chatbot interface, there's a lot more behind the scenes, right? When we're looking at the data systems in a little bit, you'll see that we've modeled the data. We've actually built out a glossary. We have all this additional context around it. I've used a number of BI systems. Through the BI systems, you can start to ask additional questions. It does get some of the semantic understanding of your data, but it doesn't have necessarily the depth that Actian AI Analyst has. So as this has gone through and started to generate, it's looking across all 6 channels that I have in my bank and confirmed the anti-money laundering designated high risk types. And now it's actually creating the analysis for us. So it breaks down my question. It looks over all the information that I have in the Actian AI system. It gathers up the models where we've modeled our data, and it starts to do the analysis, and it starts to run additional queries. And once it starts to find some information, then it starts to create the analysis. How is it going to do the presentation of this data? How is it going to present that data? All of that's being done behind the scenes. So that way, when we get our answer, that answer will be presented and we'll know how it arrived there. So we'll give that a moment. If not, we'll go ahead and look at, we'll just jump down to here. I already pre-generated it just in case it took some time. So what transaction channels are driving the exposure in our systems, right? The primary risk signal, 100% concentration in the anti-money laundering designated high-risk channels. So if I look down, what I can start to see is here's all the different channels that we have. Here's all the different transactions that we have and the total exposures throughout. So I'm able to start to see that these customers that have been flagged as low are using different systems that are traditionally seen with money laundering, right? Foreign wires in and out, cash deposits through ATM, Zelle, credits and debits. Actian AI Analyst is going through and analyzing all of this and bringing that forward. It also starts to detail out what it thinks might be happening at each of these channels, right? Knowing finance and anti-money laundering standards can start to make some assumptions here. The placement of extraction or smurfing cash might be occurring in our ATM deposits. The wire foreign out and foreign in, cross-border layering, so round tripping data, just different ways to wash and clean some of the monies that are going through our systems. And also you can see here the Zelle debit and credit, peer-to-peer structuring. So there's a lot of different ways that people have been trying to use our banking system to avoid being flagged. But Actian AI Analyst, by doing this analysis, has been able to start to expose those patterns and those approaches being used in our financial institution. So what we need to do is create a financial investigation, escalation, right? That's priority one. We need to start seeing if there are any real tells that there's money laundering happening in this. So some deeper analysis. We know where to concentrate our efforts based on the analysis we've done here. We know the flags because it's very uniform across the different channels. We know the transaction amounts. Now we can do a deeper dive into it. So we're not necessarily speculating, right? But now we're knowing where and how our customers are, moving information. And in our financial institution, we also know that our enhanced due diligence has some concerns because this stuff has been happening in our financial institution. So standard traditional dashboards that we all know, use, and love from Tableau, Power BI, MicroStrategy, those things are great at showing us some of these metrics or KPIs or insights, but they really only address the questions that they were built to address. The questions that I've asked Actian's AI Analyst start to go beyond what we currently see and know and dig more into the things that aren't easily found or seen, right? So if we think about it, what I've been able to do here so far in less than about 30 minutes is build a whole understanding of how we have issues in our bank with our anti-money laundering and KYC processes and get right in there. So if you think about analysis, it's very, very rarely is it linear, right? But by being able to have conversational AI, that's pretty powerful. It enables us as users to ask questions of our data and not just get answers, but get trusted answers because it's grounded in our business. So what really changes things is how we bring that business understanding in. And that's the governance differentiator. So if we wanted to drill in really deep from here, all right, so we know our customers, we know their transaction amounts, we know the thresholds that they've been dancing their transactions around. If we were to dig a little bit deeper, right, and ask why were these customers initially classified as low risk, right? If you think about this question, this is where most AI systems would typically fail because this is a predictive question, asking it to predict this, why all these customers were laid out as or classified as low, where we really need AI that's deterministic. And that's what Actian AI Analyst is doing, is it's using a deterministic reasoning behind the scenes. So it's going to look at all of our business context, and it's going to start to address my question because of that governed context based on our onboarding policies, our KYC, AML definitions, our enrichment processes, our enterprise data environment, the metrics, the KPI definitions that we have, our business glossaries, and our business knowledge and context. So when I ask a question like this, why are these customers initially classified as low risk? It can come back like a subject matter expert on my processes in business and answer the question, right? So what we're seeing here is, hey, it says, I can't specifically answer your question, but what I can tell you is there's a number of different issues around your risk factors, right? And the algorithmically flat onboarding cadence. The fact that there's 8 states out of all 50 that show up, and the fact that there's a uniform account type distribution. So in that earlier part, Actian AI Analyst tells me what it cannot do. right? It tells me that it cannot answer. This is where other AI systems fail. They're always wanting to help us and wanting to give us an answer, whether it's hallucinated or not. Actian AI Analyst is highly constrained that it can propose some information, but it cannot make up information. But what it did do here is provided me a number of different venues for me to work with to figure out where my processes have broken down. Was it just specifically a group that was working out of 8 states that I need to look into? Are there different laws there that allowed them to get a lower classification? All of that, I can continue my conversation with the Actian AI analyst to dig deeper, because it's not telling us, hey, these customers look suspicious. It's telling us that within our business context, based on our data and our business rules, these people are suspicious. So it's that enriched context that we have with Actian's AI analysts that is being brought forward through governed data, knowledge. That's what sets us apart from a generic AI or a homegrown solution that has skills. This is why enterprises are looking to us at Actian with our Actian AI analysts to be the trusted enterprise-wide and data analyst system for conversational analytics. So as we switch a little bit of gears here, how can we trust this? What sets Actian AI Analyst apart from ChatGPT, Gemini? All of these things have access to my knowledge, to systems that I work with. So how does Actian AI become that trusted and informed subject matter expert on our business? Well, that actually comes from how we work with your data. In our studio, we can bring all of that context forward. So what I have here is the studio, Actian's AI Analyst Studio. This actually helps us be able to create multiple analysts. So if we needed different slices or views of our enterprise data environment for, say, sales versus compliance versus support and product, we could have different analysts for that. Back to the question from earlier, how is it different from a BI chatbot? In the representation of how you work with data, whether it's through Slack, Teams, or through the UI, it is similar, but behind the scenes, this is where we differentiate, right? As we look at the analyst, we're able to provide it the specific instructions for what this analyst is supposed to do, okay? And this goes into all the details of what it is that it needs to be aware of. We're also able to bring in through models the data that we want to grant access to the system. We're able to look through multiple systems, whether it's Snowflake, Databricks, SQL Server, Azure, AWS, data in multiple places. We're able to look through it and extract out automatically what the dimensions and what the measures are. So we're able to model this information together. And that modeling helps us understand that data much more cleanly. We're also able to bring in the metrics. In my organization, we use a lot of different metrics. Some of them are specific to our organization or our approach. If you ask someone how they calculate net sales, right, you're going to find different answers between different organizations, depending on their business and how they do it. Metrics here helps to actually specify how we're calculating certain things for this analyst and for my business. And then finally, we have our glossary here. If you think about all the definitions, all the acronyms that we use, organization to organization, what an account number is, what an account type is, differs. With our glossary, we can actually extract the glossary from data catalogs that you may have. Actian has a data catalog that we can extract this information from, the metrics, models, details like that. We can build up that governed data very quickly. But the glossary is here to help understand what each of these different terminologies mean that I may be asking the Actian AI analyst. And then finally, access. Who gets access to what, right? So if we look through the studio here, each of our analysts has all of the instructions, the models, the metrics, the glossary, and the access that they need to be able to operate. So now, if you look at this, you might say, well, it's pretty good business context for an AI. How do I build it, right? How long does it take me to build this information up so that I can get useful answers from my data? Well, actually, Actian has in our AI analyst, we actually have a data steward, right? And this steward right here will actually help us build up the instructions, the model, the metrics, all of the information so that we're not starting with a blank slate. We'll be able to start with something that's pre-populated. If we have other data catalogs or other sources of information, we can bring that information in quickly as well. Now, we don't have the time in our session today to do the whole build out, but I did record a quick video that flies through building it out. And it really starts with getting connection to your data systems. So we're able to connect to data catalogs, to data sources, and using that steward, we can ask it questions. Can you help me model this data? Can you help me model this connection? And what it will do is actually review the data sources, and based on our guides that we've provided it, it knows how to model a lot of data, what a dimension is, what a metric is. And it brings all of that forward and starts to build it out for me. All of that being based on the connection to start with. The agent's actually looking through, it's troubleshooting, it's communicating, it's building all of the information I need. So for our Actian AI analysts, we do need access to data systems, possibly data catalogs as well. Thinking about data systems for a second, we are looking more towards the warehouses, right? Where do you have your medallion system? Where's your bronze, silver, gold systems, right? Once we've gathered all the information, we're able to then set up and tune what this data is. You don't have to go through all of this, but it's good to go through and identify the measures and metrics. What else will happen while using our steward is, as we start to specify what data to bring in, it'll actually pre-populate some instructions, the model, the metrics, the glossary for us. And then all we have to do is publish it. Now, that video took me about an hour to create because I went through and double checked some things as I went. So in reality, you'd be able to get started by connecting to your data and using the steward. And within an hour, you could start to analyze your data with this governed detail behind it and business context behind it, rather than trying to manually have people create reports for you to address the same thing. So in closing, let's go ahead and close out of that. In closing, I wanted to put out on Actian.com, we have the AI-analyst site. This is where you can actually get started with Actian AI Analyst. There is a free trial out there for 14 days. Just requires an email address, a little bit of information. You can get started with analyzing your data. So if I switch back, right, here we are. That's our demo. There it is, the Actian AI Analyst. It's out there, the 14-day free trial. Jenna, who is co-hosting with me today, she also put that free trial link into your chat window, so that's there. And then David's been answering a couple of questions. I've seen a few go by, but let's go ahead and open up for Q&A. And if we get some decent amount of questions that need to be asked live and answered, we'll take that now. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up sooner. Let's go ahead and look through. All right, I see a number of good questions. All right, we have one at 2:45. Okay. Ooh, great question. Is this mostly text to SQL based, or is there an LLM component as well? That's a great question. If you think about it, a lot of people are talking about, oh, well, I have AI, it can look at all my data, right? I have, an AI system in my Snowflake environment, or I have AI in my Databricks environment. Those things will do a lot of text to SQL, but they're not going to do the semantic understanding of what your data is or how it is, unless you do a lot of DIY to build up the context around it. So if I bring us back into our studio for a quick second and move our steward off, when we're presenting the instructions and when we're modeling our data out, right, we're adding business context to your interactions. So we're setting the context for how you work with the data. Metrics, same, and with glossaries, same. When we look at the actual questions that we're asking, you'll see a little bit of the secret sauce behind the scenes, right? So you'll see that it's actually interpreting the question. So text to SQL is just show me sales, right? And it's going to go find something that looks like sales and show you a report. But if you look at how it's digesting what I've asked it, the user is asking questions, right? It's using the power of an LLM to understand and do some analysis of what the question actually is. And then it's also doing the querying afterwards. Now, as we look through, you see in a couple spots like the SEMQL querying guide. I had mentioned it very briefly earlier, but if you think about your data environment, right, that's where standard SQL can work. But we actually have a layer above it called SEMQL, which is semantic SQL, right? This is our semantic understanding of how to work with data. So that way, when we are connected to system A or system B, we can translate that context, the plan of how we're going to approach it, to the specific system. So far beyond just a text to SQL translation. I remember 5 years ago, I was working with text to SQL. Nowhere close to this. This is doing semantic understanding of my questions and of my data, not just, can you write a query for me? Great question. All right, that is answered. Oh, there was a question before that. I think it was answered. I'm not sure. But what guidelines are in place to keep the analyst from hallucinating while it's working? All right, so the business context helps us understand what the data is in your data environment, how your business works and operates, right? We have a number of guardrails around it based on confidence in answers and through the analysis that will flag if it starts to go beyond these guardrails or thresholds, kind of invalidates the analysis and then makes it do other approaches. So that's a little bit behind the scenes, but we definitely have that because we can't hallucinate when working with data, right? We need to be able to call out, like we saw earlier, hey, that question that you asked, I can't answer it, right? And we say it right in the analysis, but here's some other things that you might want to look at. So we have those guardrails in there, and very much so it works off the context that we've provided it, plus some scoring and challenger approaches behind the scenes to make sure that we're not going off into a hallucination either way. So great question. Thank you, Dean. All right. Is there a feedback system? Yeah, so there is a feedback system for every one of the different questions that we ask. We do have at the bottom of these a quick feedback system right here. We're able to say what we thought is the issue with it. So this is user generated. We can start to do analysis like this. We can start to provide feedback live. Also within Actian AI Analyst, we actually have the steward actually monitoring the systems. So if we start to discover anything such as, a lot of people are querying this certain system and it's not performing as good as it used to, it'll actually send the administrators an email so that way they can start to investigate it. Now, all of this is audited and it's all logged, so all of that information is available. Our demonstration today was about compliance. If you think about that, we need to be able to prove how we arrived at these answers as well. So we have a full system available that allows you to audit how people were working with your data as well. So I know that was part of the question. And if so, how do you incorporate that into improving your context and glossary, or the agent brain, for lack of a better term? That is a great term, agent brain. I like that. So we're able to do quite a few different things with the glossaries or the metrics, right? You'll see right here, I actually have some linkages to a data catalog. Oftentimes, metrics or glossaries are generally governed and approved, whether it's by a committee or by a team. If you have a data catalog, we can consume that information from those data catalogs. If you don't have a data catalog, you can actually create terms right within the system. We can be full standalone or part of the Actian data platform and reuse information that we have from the Actian data platform. Our steward agent will actually, present to you, hey, that seems like something that you've used a few times. Is that something you want to put into a glossary term, or is that a specific metric that we should leverage as well? So there is a bit of that learning that goes on with the agent brain. I love that. I love that term, agent brain. That's awesome. All right. I think that goes through the questions that we've had. David Nidifer from my team answered a bunch of those. Were there any in chat? Okay, I see Jenna has posted out the YouTube page. That's available in the chat if you want to see it there. If there's no other questions, I think we are just about a wrap. I don't see any more questions. All right. Okay, looks like the questions are good and closed. One question that I do get a lot is, what are the data warehouses that we do support? So we cover a vast majority of data warehouses, but we cover mainly the big names, the Snowflakes, the BigQueries, the Databricks, Redshift, Synapse, Fabric, Postgres, MySQL, MariaDB, SQL Server, ClickHouse. We cover a lot, right? So if you're worried about, will you get access to our systems? Can it work with our systems? The answer is probably yes, but to be honest, it's always it depends, right? And then as far as security goes, Actian AI Analyst is out on the web. It is a SaaS offering. We have different approaches for how to connect in to the different systems that are all secure. All right. With 7 minutes remaining and no other questions in our chat or Q&A, I want to thank everyone for the time today. I appreciate you taking time to go through a demonstration of Actian's AI Analyst. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Phil. And thank you all for joining us today. Great insights from Phil. If you missed any of the webinar or want to rewatch anything, the recording will be available in a few minutes if you refresh this page and post it on our YouTube page tomorrow, which I have dropped into the chat. Thank you again to our partners at Actian. We'll see you next time.